Meenakshi, and I'll be moderating this session today. Now, as always, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box and I'll bring them up at the end of the session. The very eminent presence that we have here with us today has prepared many pearls of wisdom for us so that we know just what would be required to build ourselves in this digital era. Shubham has been associated with Deloitte, Make a Difference India, Sodexo subsidiary, Comfort Keepers, CIPD and Glendiplex Group in his career journey. He currently heads the people operations, talent and performance at Inc. 42 Media. He specializes in data-driven people operations and believes in people-centric businesses. Shubham has volunteered over 400 hours in education for children at risk in shelter homes through Make a Difference. It taught him to believe in an infinite learning curve and a solution-oriented approach based on HR analytics. And he also believes that there are no business problems that HR combined with technology cannot solve. I hope you all are as excited as I am for the session today. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Shubham Sharma. The topic for today is skill sets that will dominate in the digital economy. Shubham, welcome, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for that, Meenakshi. Felt really good hearing all of that. It's really exciting for me to be here. And again, thank you so much for having organized this. Every one of you taking out time to do this. Been working and reading a lot about how to go about this. But since the whole idea is what sort of skill sets are going to dominate in the digital economy, I thought it's best that 30 minutes altogether that we have, I can provide more tangible ideas or things that we at a company use every day that has helped us build that leverage and accelerate the learning overall. So I thought the best starting point for this today would be this little thing I read called the Red Queen effect. To understand the Red Queen effect, it's in the simplest terms, it's simply as the fact that anything that we do at a greater pace today may only keep us where we already are. But there is a much faster rate of change, a much faster adaptation that requires in terms of innovation that's happening right now to actually move from where we are. For that matter, the story goes, I think it's through the Looking Glass book that it belongs from. There's this young girl, Alice, who's being homeschooled by the Red Queen. The idea for the Red Queen is that she wants Alice to know all the life lessons there are and to become a brilliant person altogether. So one of the most important lessons that the Red Queen talks about is the speed of learning, or how to learn in the first place, like the very first lesson. For that, she takes Alice out in the jungle and they decide that they have to run as far as possible to see what more they can explore and what new they can be. So hand in hand, they start running in. The Red Queen is continuously pushing Alice to be as fast as possible, to go as fast as possible. After a while, of course, Alice is getting tired. She's got. The Queen says, ignore it, don't look at where you're going, keep running as fast as you can. In a while, when the Red Queen realizes, of course, Alice is exhausted. So she asks, let's take a break. Confused, Alice looks at the same tree that they've been running from, and it's the same spot. So she asks the Red Queen that, in the country where she comes from, if you run that fast for that long, you generally reach a place. It did not happen. So the Red Queen says, you must be from a slow country. Here, all the running and effort that we did was just to remain here. Now imagine how fast you would have to run to actually be somewhere. So that altogether became the Red Queen effect, and there are multiple variations of this. A lot of you are from IT here today, I think 40% of the people. So, there was a time when there were half the amount of chips being used, and each year it doubles. It's called the Moore's law, where let's say if in 1921 a computer had 5 chips, the next year it had 10, then it had 20, 40, and it exponentially increasing. Today, I think it's a billion chips in there. So altogether, the pace that we're growing at, be as a business, as human species, it's so fast that the fundamental skill set is about adaptive change. एक time था where as an intern or as a new joiner, as a fresher, knowing VLOOKUP was a big thing. I know how to do VLOOKUP. I just track the cells and things happen. So that was a key skill to have. or someone who had something even more to brag about would say, "मुझे pivot tables भी आती है." So altogether, that was a very core idea of a very fresher's job. So similarly, today at a very fundamental level, just the idea of how much competition we have has changed overall requirements to get certain skills or upskilling yourself altogether again. And the whole idea is in such a cycle where one, you want to go for next Apple iPhone, you want to go for next product which is possibly twice as fast as last year, cheaper than before, more quality, easier, makes your life easier. And to do all of that innovation, as workers, we have to keep upskilling ourselves. You have to be better at your code. Your code needs to be shorter, simpler, more efficient. Your marketing needs to have higher open rates, higher conversions. As a salesperson, your lead to conversion ratio needs to be higher. So each in your job, you have these things that keep improving because we ourselves as consumers also want to experience the outcomes of it. The thing is, when going from 1 to 2 to 4, it still is a pace we can catch up on. But then now, 2020 itself has created so many ripple effects, has accelerated the already 10x learning. So if you have to imagine this, let's see if the next 1 year of innovations and changes that are to come in the world, it will take, of course, 1 year for it to experience it. Next year, the same amount of changes we'll experience in 9 months. 20, 30 years down the line, about maybe 100 years of changes would be experienced in 16 days, in 30 days. So it's keep on increasing. Idea is to stay in pace with that. Especially pandemic, because it's like pressing a spring. That's the best example to go for. If there's a spring, and simply how it works is you press it hard, and then when you let it go, it pops up with a lot of momentum in it. So this is what's been happening throughout 2020. Be it the uncertainties, be it your overall business ideas that may work, may not work, sort of market responses are coming in. All they're doing is they're making people slightly desperate as businesses because they need to pivot, they need to sustain, or at least stay alive towards whatever the next normal is. We have to keep innovating. So once all of these restrictions, these uncertainties go away, that all the pressure that's been all this time on the spring is going to move, and there'll be a very high and very fast jump in terms of what's expected in your roles. Take this example. Right now, most of us are working from home. So that one myth, कि घर से काम नहीं होता, has no value anymore. We know it happens. The world is running on it now. The idea where, unfortunately, a lot of companies had to make a business call and let people go. They're learning how to make work happen with a lesser amount of people in. With the companies that were never digital, were not in content, they have all the sort of properties now, be it podcast, be it a webinar, or anything. So then lesser people are doing the same amount of work. To have a competitive advantage, they're doing even better. So a new benchmark that comes out of this is everything that we're doing superfluously before becomes lesser, simpler, easier, and cheaper. So that makes you, me, all of us as individuals, as workers, much under pressure of competition in terms of what works best. So for that, there's a lot of people saying this, that standing still is the fastest way of moving backwards. So there's no breaks, there's no cheat days in your upskilling journey. Not in after 2020. I don't see there'll be a time where sabbaticals are not a break from everything. Sabbatical is where you really want to ramp up your learning now. Your weekends, your work-life balances, things are changing altogether, and so the need of doing even more. So that's the whole idea about your momentum and the speed of learning that needs to be. Question comes in: what is this shift, or how do we know a rate of change? It can't be me as an individual opinion, or it can't be just something that's out there. It's very practical, because when you create a graph of what sort of inventions have been happening over a period of time, imagine 1950 versus 2000. No phones, nothing. 50 years, a lot of revolutions, agriculture, your IT, telecom happened. but then there is 2000, 2010, the internet and everything. The difference between 2010 is much more than those 50 years of upgradation. Similarly, just look at the last 2 to 3 years. Look at EdTech. It's gone way up. You won't believe Baiju has crossed the valuation of Paytm now. I mean, Paytm literally does money transaction, but it is still less valued at company as Baiju. It is a service provider in education within a group of audience. Similarly, you look at companies like the Ink42 for that matter. For us, it's just the news out there. Subscription business, people moving, reading, more went all the way up. If you compare any role, you would see the rate of change has shifted. This entire expectation or a basic benchmark within a time frame is your paradigm. That what is the paradigm right now? So to compare, let's say HR and marketing in 2000, 2010 versus HR and marketing in 2011-20. It simply shows today I'm doing a job that did not exist in 2015. When I was graduating, I didn't know, okay, I want to do performance. I didn't know what it was. There are people who are specialists now. There's an individual who's probably within HR, an attrition specialist. All they do is work on the attrition analysis, see what works, what doesn't work, and work around that. There are people who are happiness managers. Within data analytics, you have such niche profiles, which does, let's say, just a chi-square testing specialist who makes sure that your ability to predict and the actual thing matches up. So there's so many roles that we all are upskilling towards, but there are even more roles that don't even exist yet. So a lot of things you would input in your upskilling for next 1 month, year, 2 years, and then so on, because it cannot stop. The learning has to keep going. You're doing it for the jobs that don't even exist at the moment. They would come in place maybe a year down the line or just tomorrow with what sort of innovation that comes in. Similarly, if you look at the sort of IQ and EQ ratio in overall remuneration, in 1980, if you had all the academic skills, at least 5 degrees, and you have that good network, you get a good pay. So your 90% of the payment was for your IQ, 10% was for your emotional question, the EQ. 2020, right now I believe about 60% of your remuneration is set based on the EQ. Your people management, your first principle thinking, your second order thinking, how you perceive problem statements, how you isolate them, how you work, how you enable people. I mean, it's the same attendance systems, it is the same performance matrix and bell curves out there, but they're not being used to monitor people. They're being used for enabling people. If I know what area you're best at, and I know what area it's not working out for you, I will want to see how can I increase the best you're already doing, because just being best today will again make you say the Great Queen effect. You'll fall back. You have to be better than every day. So altogether, EQ gets a lot of emphasis, and then comes in the mental models. All of this is to be used in a very realistic manner in your own jobs. So if I have to work out, let's say, where do I start? So imagine there are things that can. So let's take 2 examples. Let's take IT or coding is one. Any sort of a full stack developer or tech job, and let's take a job in human resources. A typical role in both of them is you get a product cycle, in a tech job. You see what product cycle requires in terms of the product. You build a wireframe for it. You see what sort of a flow it would have. You start your coding. You have a bit of piloting done. Then you do a lot of bug fixing, quality, and gets out. That's a linear progression. Similarly, in HR, you go to Naukri.com, you go to LinkedIn, you go to any of the hiring posts. You seek up a good candidate, you give them a call. If you're looking for a change, the person says no, yes, you give them the interview, and then you're done. This is probably 50 years old now if you still use it. So these are the things that we actually know. Then there are things that we think we know. It's just something that you haven't used in your job, maybe theoretically studied it, read it, but again, you've not been using it in your job. And then there's a whole big range of skills that people don't even know about. So that is where I think we'd start with, and I'll come back to the circle of competence. Share screen. Actually, would you confirm if my screen is visible still?
Yes, it is. It's on the slide. Where do I start?
Okay, let me change that to perfect. I think my screen is visible.
We can see the hiring projects and automation
Perfect.
flows.
Perfect. So now, since there's so much speed in competitive advantage in learning, this is what Excel in 2021 should look like. I mean, it's not Excel, it's a planning platform, but the step one becomes a flow. So a basic HR role would require you now to know how automation works, how analytics works, how flows work. You create your planning and roadmap for how a person is. A person may fill the form, a person may partially fill the form and say it's too long to fill, bored to do it, exit it. There could be a person who would open a mail or a job but would not apply. And then there is a person who does not do that at all. All of that, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can you just zoom in a little because it's not very visible?
Sure.
Yes, thank
How
you
about
so
now?
much.
It works?
It does.
Perfect. So to take an example, let's say if you come on a job post, a person may fill the form, which is the perfect scenario and what we all aim for. There would be a scenario where a person partially fills the form but does not complete it because the form could be too long or the person did not, feel engaged anymore. There could be a person who opens an email or a message or however they've been shown the job post, but they don't click at all. And then there's an individual who would not open or see it at all. So each of the buckets has to be automated. How do I make sure a larger audience gets to see a job post? Same implies if you're a marketer, same implies if you're a salesperson. For me, the product is people, so most of my references would be around that. But you can put this in any role that you have. Could be account management, could be tech. So once a person has been understood which bucket they fall in, immediately the person who's partially filled the form will get a QR code and say, hey, it's busy times and work from home has increased so much of time in the home and working. How about you scan this QR code and your application is done? I would want to go for that. It's quick, it's easy. Then a person who opened the email, but there was no engagement, which means either your messaging or your content did not get the person to engage with it, or it could be the person was not the right person to reach out to. If you are into sales and I'm sending you a job in tech profile, of course you would not apply for that job. And then there are individuals who are not opening the mail at all. Could be they did not get it. Could be my filters are not wide enough or does not put them in place. And this goes as a process of improvement. Once the person comes in, now I know that yes, we have to scale at a lesser hiring cost or a cost per hire has to be less. I cannot have a large recruiters team who are doing calls every day. First of all, it does not add any learning to that talent pool because all they're doing is a repetitive exercise every day. Second of all, it's costly because I have to pay 5-6 people, the phone calls, the internet and everything. So how about you duplicate your decision making into a flow where the system knows what you would do if you were manually working this out. In which case, you create conditions. A person comes in, if the person is in the condition, accordingly moves in. And similarly, every single job has a flow of its own based on where you are, what you do, what sort of filters companies have for let's say, hiring the right person for this job. And once this is done, the second point would come in, how do I automate the interaction process? So, and I would show how these tools work at the end of this as well. So here's another flow. All I have to do is a person would apply for the job and let's see how the journey goes. I think this would explain it. Information comes on an Excel sheet, goes and creates a task. It gets divided into 5 people, moves to each different task, could be calling, updating them, making sure they reply. They get a confirmation email and their interview is scheduled on Google Calendar. Their profile is learned by the system and is updated on Asana, goes back to the sheet. And finally, adds to a system that, hey, we interacted with this person. Let's connect on LinkedIn, let's connect on HubSpot. Now, this is a manual process that would take 6 to 7 minutes per candidate. Whereas I don't really have to do. I just click on this play button and it all does. So now I've saved a good amount of time, which I have to reinvest. Now into second thing. Okay, we hired a person. What next? Then is your onboarding. Same process. All you have to do is issue a job letter. Once the job letter is issued, another flow starts in. We ask for the relieving letter, all the document system, all the boring work. The work that does not require judgment, it is purely clerical in nature. You should not be doing it in 2021. If there's anything that has no judgment required, is repetitive in nature, and has a standard operating process automated right away, because you would save a lot of time. Once a person comes on board, they know whom they have to meet with, what the bank would has to do, who's their buddy, what sort of meeting expectations they need to have. And finally, imagine if at the end of this 90 days journey of your onboarding, you're able to get a break-even idea, exactly how much money the company invested in you, and then let's see how much profit you're generating. There is neither an uncertainty in your job anymore, because you could see that, okay, my first 45 days were X amount of value consumed because you were learning, you were doing your own piloting, maybe you were working on projects that were not of that clarity. But once you paged up, you started creating value. That's your breaking point. So what this process has done is, first, it has saved time. The moment I have time, now I can think about upskilling myself to dominate in the digital economy in the future. But if there's no time, then tomorrow I'll go and I'll be doing the same work that I've been doing it, which, though it's not a literary quote, but it is a very valuable quote from Kung Fu Panda. If you keep doing the same thing every day, you'd be the same person you are. There's nothing different about it. So to do different, you need to have more time. Now, this is the basic Excel VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, equal to sum on the cells we used to keep 10 years back. And this is what is expected at across startup ecosystem, across large corporates, where one individual is agile, is able to drive multiple automations. It's either reducing cost or increasing profit. And if neither, then it's working towards scalability. That's all the hype words that go around. So coming back to our presentation, let me just fix that. There we go. So now let's come back to the competency circle. So this is the circle of competence, as it's called. There's a lot of content on Google about this. Now that I know that, okay, I know how to call people. I know what messaging attracts an individual to apply or not apply. Start imagining right away whatever jobs you have at the moment. Just take a one project which has a starting phase, engagement phase, and an end phase. So you start with something you already know, and then you figure out by breaking it into smaller steps that how many of those things I actually do not need to do. Is there a tool out there? Is there an automation out there that can just take away? Once that is done, you move to the idea of scaling it. Is there something that I can do where this is consistently being done over a period of time? If you create a system, that's great, but you have to have a check on it every second day, then probably you have a new task to do, which is to check it every day. So you eliminated one task, but then you created one more task. So end goal was not actually saving time. So you have to have sustainable systems. And as simple as this, you all have specialization, you have years of experience. You take that as it is, don't discard that. It's not that you would right away have a career move or change in your entire competency circle to start altogether new. Whatever you've had doing so far, even if you did a course which has nothing to do with your job, even that would have transferable competencies within. So to look at, see on the next slide. So these are something that right away are working within today's paradigm. Perfect. Now, so first is your content. Again, let's pick up your tech job. So right now, there are people who are working in Python Django framework. Why? It's more responsive, it's almost English. Then there are people who would want it to be more effective, host larger audiences in traffic. They're going for Node.js, they're going for AngularJS. Then you have a lot of people who are WordPress, fighting between WordPress versus Magento in that scale. All of these are your technical skill set. Everyone in your job role would have that. You're not competing with it. How you're competing? With your content, your GitHub profile, your LinkedIn general audiences. Learning by yourself how much new content you bring in, new projects you are putting out in the open as open source. As sales individual, again, your content, your interactions throughout the social media, it's all in there. Second part comes in SaaS. There are horizontal SaaS, which does not belong to a very particular industry. Everyone can use it. So, for example, I just showed you an example of how HR can use all those SaaS products. Think about as a designer. If I know that there are certain number of iterations that always takes place with a client, if I know internally whenever I send something, these are the variations that they ask for. This is something I can predict over a period of time. First, start observing that at a faster scale, that you know that there is a pattern, there's a trend, or ask for the end goal, right? Is this that you're trying to achieve? Yes. Step usse pehle wala is to get your final copy before the last edits. Once you break down all the way back to your starting point, you can identify which of these steps can be automated. For example, a lot of designers, when I'm interviewing them, they talk about a concept of flow. That, I don't like being bothered when I'm in a flow. When I start working on a design, I want to continue, till it's done. So a lot of people think there's nothing as flow, but there is, definitely a concept of having a flow in your work. So for that matter, they used to get disruptive every time being asked about, "Us client ka design is done? Hey, did we make those changes? What's the ETA for that coming design?" So there is this short burst of communication which seemed like a fraction of seconds. Like, all you have to do is just reply, yes, no, by tomorrow, 3 hours. That's all it is. But it actually breaks up how you're working up. So we created this project system where all the team can transparently see the workload of all the others, where you create a task, you assign the task to someone, you have a timeline to it, and all your communication is there. It's no rocket science. It's very simple and it's dynamic. Now, when a person wants to get an update, rather than going to that individual, they simply open that platform and see, okay, this is where it has reached. Oh, this was supposed to be done today. Why is it not done? You open it, you see what the reason is. You see where it is stuck. So you wouldn't have to take away time from other people as well as saving yours, because all that information comes in one place. That's just one small example. If you are in marketing, I'm sure you've experienced how Active Campaign works at a smaller scale, how MailChimp works, or how Google Cloud platforms work. All of those things are no longer advanced in terms of what you need to know. You have to see within your role all of these platforms that are working out. And the best way is customizing as per you, which we can do with the last 30 minutes of this, because there's a lot of Q&A. So you can understand what your role is, what exactly is your success parameter in the role, and then what aspects exist that can automate it or analyze it or to make you more skilled in dominating your competitive advantage. Then comes in blind spot. Your role alone may be just tech, just sales, just HR, just marketing, but it does not work like that at all. You have to be a polymath in that sense. Any person who is in sales needs to have a strong content, a design sense, needs to know how CRMs work, be it HubSpot, be it Freshdesk, or there are 10 out there right now. You need to know how does all of that data get structured, how you tags work. It's all becoming a basic expectation from all. Then, not just because there are so many things, you have to decide how do you approach it, where do you start, which tool or which activity, which project you do first. As a team or as an individual, you need to have frameworks for that too. Like RISE, I have given one example. A lot of marketing ideas when we do a white hat system, so we pop in, we can do a campaign for this, we can do emailers, we can do messaging, we can do ATL, BTL activity, or we can do a college ambassador program. So when you have a list of a lot of ideas, you have to decide which one first, and more importantly, why. So for that, we use a system called RISE. R is simply reach, which is if I do this campaign, what would be my reach by achieving a complete engagement? I is your impact. If my goal is user acquisition, if my goal is conversion, then how much conversion possibly this particular activity compared to the other would have? C is your cost to it. Like, how expensive, how feasible it comes in, or simply let's say how confident are you that would happen. E is at the end, overall, you see that the effect of this is matching all your decisions. So when you add all of the numbers you've assigned to rise, you would see there is a particular campaign that I'm confident about, does not have a lot of reach, but has a good impact, and it can be done in a shorter time. So this is now a low hanging fruit. So you now make a more informed decision that, okay, do I do something that does not take a lot of effort, which is your e-head, but has a medium reach, or do I do something that has a lot of effort, less confidence, but then the impact and reach is even greater. So your opportunity cost is right in front of you to decide. This makes not just decision making faster, but again buys you time to gain that competitive advantage of scaling up. And last is analytics. No matter what your role is, no matter what you do, maths cannot lie, numbers cannot lie. Human beings still have a bias. A lot of times we lie and we don't even subconsciously know we are. But that does happen. Data does not lie. So when you allow such decisions to be made through logical comprehension in there, or simply your analytics, it works best. So if you're starting on your SaaS automation content analytics journey, like for the first time, if you already are, you would know a lot of these. These are very basic tools. See how it works. So first thing comes in your integromat. That was the cute little geo that pops up the dots, explaining how it works. It said that integromat is like a Fevicol or a glue for the internet. What it does is, let's take again a sales example. Let's say you send an email as a lead through HubSpot, and the person replies to the lead with an interest. You can create an integromat that if a person replies to it, add a row in my Excel sheet as a tracker. Another one, the moment let's say a row in my Excel sheet is added, create a task on my HubSpot and schedule a call at this time. So your Google Calendar gets updated and an email is dropped out. Update your fellow team members about one creating a proposal, one creating a design, and one working out as an account management. Okay. The moment this is done, you move next. Once uploaded, let's say once a proposal is uploaded, share with the client. If the feedback is shared, email it to this person. So a lot of coordination that you would have to do is over now. It could be as simple as this: when you send a large email, you put your hot leads, cold leads, warm leads in 3 buckets, and you have an automated system of keeping you reminded or prioritizing it. But if you're doing 5 calls a day, which are those 5 calls? You would want to go where you have the maximum returns possible, and then go down the list. All of that is gone in just a click on an integromat for that matter. To be able to do this, you need Whimsical. Whimsical is almost like Iron Man and Jarvis, to be very honest. If you could put it on a big screen, like a nice white big screen, you place all the activities you do, be it your calls, be it your projects, your wireframes, your flow, anything. You put it all there, and then you can just keep moving it. If you have an iPad or a touch screen, it's even better. Then it's truly Jarvis in that matter. So you can create your own flows. You can see by breaking tasks that where is it that you would have a realistic challenge. A lot of times we just think of a project, but we don't break them down to smaller steps to know where we'll get stuck. We only get to know when we get stuck. So we're not predicting anything. Next comes in either SQL or Python. Again, it sounds something that has a lot of coding maybe into it. It's not at all. It takes half an hour on YouTube to learn a basic SQL that can fetch you data that you're seeking from a large space. As a marketer, if you have e-commerce website, or if you have, let's say, a content website, you would want to know how your people are behaving. You would want to know how many of them are reoccurring users. You would want to know how many of them come in and they only search or read about a particular topic. And then accordingly, you would want to target them so that you can enable their time use best. For all of that, you need SQL. If you are a person with 10, 15 years of experience, belong to generation Y or Z for that matter, or X for that matter, right now, for you, it's the most important, without a doubt. Being a digital marketer does not mean you can do a lot of emails, that you can post a lot of content on social media or LinkedIn, get likes, get comments. It does not mean that at all. A product marketer or a digital marketer needs to be someone who's super strong with data analytics, is purely experimental based. Again, no assumptions. You would need to see your data. You would need to see how, when you did A, what response was. And if that response was not what you would want, you would not do A again at school. You would move to the next one. All of this at a very fast pace. So that is your SQL or Python. 1 hour, 2 hours on LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, anywhere that you can find a course. You have to have that. And that again is not an advantage. You start using it in your role, and then you keep evolving it every week, every month in either of the three buckets. You need to either show profit, or you need to show reduction in cost, or you need to show scale. Uh, End goal has to come out with that. Next comes in everything that I'm saying would be obsolete probably, I don't know, 5-6 months down the line. Maybe it's just that long that all of that I'm saying right now is actually valuable, because that would change too. So that means you can't stick to an opinion and advice or a content for one time. You have to keep changing that as well. And that's where comes in this amazing Warren Buffett's quote at, if you read 500 pages every day, that's how knowledge works. It builds up like compound interest. All of you can do it, but I guarantee not many of you will do it, of course. For that too, if you want to imagine how fast the learning is going, there are now, I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, apps that come in and tell you we have this gist of a book. You can complete the 100 books the CEO reads in a month, in 1 month, or 2 months. All you get is a synopsis of the books in form of audibles or reading, because people still don't have time. It's accelerating every day, but the whole learning aspect of things. So once you're done with this, then comes in the most important part in terms of actually seeing results. That's your North Star matrix. To give you an example, I was having this conversation with CEO that, how is the hiring management going on? And I said that we were able to achieve 100 calls a day with just one person, but actually we spend just 1.5 hours. That's great. And that's all, like, it's amazing. Have you hired someone? Then I don't think from this exercise any good candidate came out was the thing, because my North Star metric is someone getting hired. It is not how many calls can be made in a day. It is not how many people would apply for a job. If one person applies for a job and that one person gets hired, my job is done as well. So you have to know what your true North Star metric is. If you're a salesperson, it's great to focus on how many leads were moving from cold to hot, how many of them are closed or have been invoiced. More important part, how many of them are again collected. That's your first. The collection is different from invoicing. I'm sure all the sales folks know that. Second important part comes in the reoccurring, or the let's say the vertical sales that happens, the upselling that happens. You just don't want that person to be there for that one time. You would want that client to come again tomorrow. So that probably is your North Star metric, where you want to have a longer a client value for, let's say, 2-3 years, and not just the one property that they're buying from you. As a marketer, again, your North Star metric could seem page views, it could seem subscriptions, it could seem how many active daily users you have. But then again, once you understand what your overall business objective is, you will realize that it is actually the renewal of your subscriptions that matter, maybe. If you are in, let's say, if you're using Paytm will not be very happy if a large number of people have downloaded their apps, right? If there is the maximum number in India has been downloading this app, that's it. For them, it matters how many transactions per day per person takes place, or how many vendors prefer taking that payment through their channel. So the North Star metric in your role has to be a single number which is quantifiable, and when you look at it, you can see what true outcome that you're having in your role, be it any role altogether. So that's the best starting point and the minimal area to start with. Lastly comes in your LinkedIn altogether. So for LinkedIn, you can go on to profiles that are already achieving a lot. Let's say there's a particular profile which is a senior tech manager at Google. What I would do is I would take their profile. I would see that, okay, they've worked for 25 years or 20 years and they've reached it here. You reverse engineer that profile and you compare that this is what I'm doing today if I want to be there, let's say 10 years, 15 years down the line, which needs to be done actually in 5 years or 4 years because things are accelerating, you would reverse engineer and see what deliverables or what success parameters or North Star metrics that person has. Once you understand what that person is achieving for which they have that role, then you can come back and see that what am I doing today? If I have to do that, how much time I have, and what is my source of learning. Once you've identified it, you can reverse engineer a lot of profiles, work around the dream job you have, the dream companies you have, and then make differences in the terms of your learning rate and not just what skills you're going for. So that's altogether a mix of your red team set, your competency map, and your fast learning. I think that's about it in terms of
Thank you so much, Shubham, for all of that. That's quite interesting, as I commented before. So, participants, we are open for questions now. You can just type it in the chat box or the Q&A box. Till then, Shubham, I'll just start off with the first question. All right. Ruchira Lahiri has a question that do you think advent of AI and machine learning will make any jobs go obsolete in the coming years in India?
well, I'm not sure if that would make jobs obsolete, depending upon how many people take AI as a job. I mean, before AI takes your job, that's the best idea. You take AI as a job. But yes, there are a lot of clerical tasks. There are a lot of repetitive things that we used to employ a large number of people, and the same can be achieved in lesser number of people. So, of course, I mean, AI, ML, any sort of predictive analysis would impact, and that would become just like any other skills that people add on their resumes. Like, this is something obvious that everyone would know down the line.
Right. Thank you so much for that. The second question that we have is that what would be required? So we have a lot of people from an IT background, we have a lot of people from finance background and other domains as well. So what would be required? What do you think are the key skills required for a person to switch into another domain, say again HR, maybe talent? So what do you think would be the calling for tomorrow?
As a tech individual, if someone is thinking towards any form of product, be it in HR, sales, of course, there are platforms, and having a coding knowledge can definitely help with it. For example, if you have a software or if you have a script within your coding, or they say just using Python, you have a script that can parse all the text that there is on a PDF file or on the website to, let's say, a form. So you apply with your resume. You didn't have to fill any name or anything. All the information gets picked up. All of that comes from the tech people. So products is what you would want to transition to, and the product can belong to any domain. It could be a sales product, a marketing product. It could be, let's say, just a retail product, and those are a lot out there. So I think transition would be to see first what problem you want to solve. It could be a problem of, let's say, payment APIs. A lot of website, a lot of D2C brands, they're all moving digital right now, right? Be it your Fab India sorts companies or your Mintras and Nikas, they all have transactions going on. But all these tools that are there, be it your Razorpay or be it any MobiQuick, I suppose, all of them, they require a lot of KYC, they require a lot of challenges from a tech perspective for your website and the payment gateway to marry each other. But if you want to make, let's say, something more helpful, you can work around systems that allow people to pay through Instagram. It could be a link which needs to compete with UPIs, of course. As a product or as a retail, you can work with restaurants. There are companies like Possessed, LimeTray. What they do is they created platform software that allow restaurants to optimize, their resources, their cooking styles, their menus. So whatever competence you have, whatever skill sets you have, they're all useful. It's just a matter of how fast you can adapt to the needs that are changing every day and how you solve any customer problem. If you find a product market fit, I'll be giving your example next. Whenever the company becomes that.
Right. Again, from Shailendra Kumar, how does a core IT guy with 12 years of experience move to a leadership role like CXO profile? What is the strategy or skill which is required to achieve such a such a role?
So whenever we're moving from a junior role to a senior role or towards a leadership, there are a lot of blind spots. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but a lot of senior people that I've worked with, they keep telling me, Shubham, think at 30,000 feet, see the bigger picture. All they meant was that don't just limit yourself to the technical skill that you have. You may have an IT skill. I'm not sure where it lies. It could be infrastructure management, or it could be hardware IT, or it could be pure server side work. More importantly, do you know how compliances work, how GDPR works, what are the loopholes or what are the routing ways of your data that works around an IT? Then how does a government compliance work in India, particularly if you're setting up any of your IT work? So your compliance in legal is a very important aspect, because as a CXO, you're accountable for it. As a manager, if there is something wrong, you were responsible for it, but there are no repercussions as such that the company has to bear together. As a CXO, if something goes wrong, it could be a penalty because the compliance wasn't followed. It could be that your entire website or server went down and the overall SLA was more than you had initially promised. All of that, you would be accountable for it. Or how we generally kid around ki things that जिसके लिए आपको धर लिया जाएगा. So in that sense, you wouldn't want any blind spots around you. You need to know how to get talent. I'm sure if you have LinkedIn, you must know other people who are in your field. If you become a CXO, you would want your team to be the right team that you would want to pick on yourself. So it's not just you who would get hired as a CXO. If I'm interviewing you, I would want to know that I know you are planning to join the company, but then who all you bringing along with you. So you would have to become a package, not just an individual. That definitely helps.
That's a very interesting viewpoint. Thank you. Shamir Sablok has a question that if machines are going to take away jobs in the future, then do you think that organizations have a responsibility to train and teach the current set of employees rather than hiring from outside with people with more competencies and giving pink slips to the current people?
I love, ask this question. 100%. Actually, everyone who's in the workforce right now, the best way, and actually companies that have learning cultures and who are investing in upskilling towards people, ensuring that their jobs will become obsolete, they are more likely to retain good talent, without a doubt. And to give you an answer for that, believe me, it's already happening, and it's happening to all the companies who want to take competitive advantage. Simply, if your company has a rating system that by the end of the year, someone is going to give you a score out of 5, and that's all the feedback there is for your appraisals, for your growth, that's obsolete, right? For us, for example, all the journalists in a company, they have a dashboard. They can see who reads it, when they read it. If there's a lot of people who are coming on their story, but then they're not reading the entire story, they know that the picture and the headline is great because it's getting people, but the content somewhere is not holding the audience. That is why they're not reading it. So now if I tell them you did 3 out of 5, they don't ever would know what they need to do differently. Whereas when you see that this is the exact data challenge that I'm seeing, they know that, okay, my headline and my picture is apt, it's doing its job. In my content, let's say the rock star part of the story is at the end. People are not reaching there. So if I move my rockstar paragraph a bit up, people would read all the way more down. Marketers will be happy because they have more session per user now. And the product people would be happy because average time spent by user increase. And the journalist is happy because that's what they would want to go for. Maximum people to read and everything that they do. So you see, the learning is not just having an L&D or doing your Coursera courses. It's more about how aware you are every day in terms of the feedback. If you're waiting a year, or if it's entirely dependent on a human being, human beings have biases. It could be personal, it could be professional, but if your overall CTR has agreed 20%, it doesn't matter how a relationship is. 20% is going to be 20%, right? I mean, that's the best feedback. It's clean, it has no intentions hidden, and it genuinely tells you what is working and what is not working. So that's the sort of learning companies need to focus on, and not just doing a lot of projector pay courses.
Right. The next question is from Keegan Fernandez. From a mid-management level executive, how do you decide what depths of technicality should one get into with respect to the domain of data science or AI/ML, etc.?
Well, things that continue to keep me on payroll, that's first. If I start working on a project that is super fancy and has a lot of great things, but the result will be 1 year down the line, I'll be out of the job in the first 3 months, then I'm pretty sure I'm not completing that project. So you have to see how much you can afford in terms of time. Nothing happens in one day. Everything that you just saw in terms of few examples in hiring, that did not happen overnight, or I did not have a course particularly about it. It was 1% rule. Today, let's just solve the problem that when a candidate applies, they don't know if I have received the application. So let's just solve that today. Tomorrow, a lot of candidates, they apply, they do interview, but then, it is their right to know how to do it. So it's possible to manage this everything everywhere? No. So let's try create a form where the interview takes a form, and if a person asks, they can simply get it back in email, automatically get it. That's one problem. When a person is onboarded, there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of training that needs to be done. People can get overwhelmed, especially when you're coming from, let's say, a new company or a new role. In that case, you can become overwhelmed with all of it. So let's just solve the problem of identifying if you are an auditory learner or a kinesthetic learner, and then accordingly customize your onboarding. So see, all of these problems were very small and initially just one. Once we solve enough problems and we keep evolving them every day 1%, that's what creates the depth of the technicality that we want to use, the tools we want to use. It doesn't happen in one go. You should read about this blue ocean strategy. A CEO shared with us last year, I suppose, which was simply about there are trade-offs. There are all the things you want to do would be great. They'll be amazing. But you can't do all of them. So you have to trade off with reality. That this much I can actually get done and will show results. Rest of it, it's very exciting. We want to do it, but phase one is going to be just as much. So when you move one day at a time, 1% every day, it compounds into much larger. So it's a marathon. This morning on Breakfast with Kirsten mentioned this amazing statement that everything we do is a marathon. And the universe actually is rigged in a way that you would only be great at one thing. I mean, no matter how much you try, you will only be great at one thing. So you have to keep compounding it.
The next question is from Center. NASSCOM has predicted 30 lakh job cuts starting 2022 across key IT organizations in India. What is your perspective on this, and what is your suggestion to counter this challenge from an employee perspective?
Well, I'm pretty sure that WHO, IMF, RBI all together cannot predict when the wave 3 is going to hit. So I'm pretty sure that they would not. I mean, that could be a business call, more around what their products are or what sort of systems they internally have altogether. Like each of the companies that would have a layoff, but it's not different from what already was there. So each generation, if you look at it, has faced something similar. The World War I generation had their own perspective, then the World War II, then 1947 people experience would have a different fate in the world. The people who were born in the China war, 1999 times, they would have a different perspective. For us, the big story in our life is COVID, probably 2020, and a lot of other things. So each generation gets, affected by what sort of experience they've had in that generation. Similarly for us, we all have a lot of time for learning in. Maybe there would be those many cutoffs in the jobs, maybe not. But I'm not sure if that will have a direct impact or an indirect impact. I mean, I have no take on it altogether for that matter.
Anil has a question that what would you recommend for a hardcore sales and marketing person climbing to the level of VP who has a very good EQ but is not very interested in too much digitalization, which is limitless? So what would you recommend for somebody like that?
Hire someone who can. I mean, hire someone in your team who can. And believe me, uh, especially salespeople, they are so brilliant in what they do because they have spent so many years building those leads, those clients, where they can give a call, work out a property, get the thing sold. Because they've built that. I mean, that's literally what their earning has been throughout the sales journey. But yes, if you just keep doing that, you would become complete. So you do need tech, you do need digitization, and it's totally possible that you would not want to invest the current time, or be it interest or be it let's say technical possibility to create all those systems. But what you can always do is you can hire someone who can.
Thank you. Mr. Rajiv Day has a question that a telecom employee from customer support is not being considered by most of the companies like banking, e-commerce, and other sectors. What should we consider to develop to get in the competitive market? Mr. Sharma? Participants, please stand by. I think we've lost Mr. Sharma for a second here. He will be joining us shortly. Mr. Sharma will be joining us in a moment. He has just logged off and will be logging in again. We can just blame it on technology, I guess. Meanwhile, if you have any more questions, do type it into the Q&A box and I'll take it up. Rakesh. We are 3 minutes into the session. Sorry, we have 3 minutes remaining for the session, and Mr. Sharma has just joined in. Mr. Sharma, can you hear us now?
Sorry about that, Maxi.
No worries. Participants, thank you so much for waiting along with us. Should I just post the question to you, Mr. Sharma?
Yes, please. Also, if you can work out the video again.
Okay, sure. Sarjeet, could you help out with the video part? So the question is from Mr. Rajiv Day. A telecom employee from customer support is not being considered by most of the companies like banking, e-commerce, etc. So what should he do to develop his own skills to get into a competitive market?
Okay, so if you're into support role, there's a lot of roles with different nomenclature. So don't go for traditional job titles. For example, a role that you might be looking for is called now a customer delight manager or a customer success manager. These are very common things around it. But for a lot of people who've been in the industry for long, it doesn't resonate well. As a skill set, first of all, process. So, for example, bots is considered something as, again, very fancy or requiring a lot of coding and things, but it does not. So earlier, when you were working with a large team who would do your customer support or let's say banking, now the team is of bots. Okay, so for example, there are 3 people that work in my team. They all interact with everyone, and if anything goes wrong, it gets escalated to me, so I can solve it. What it does is, so actually those 3 bots is me. So those 3 people are also me. There are just different bots who've been trained to reply in a certain manner. What it does, it does not allow me to spend a lot of money on having a large workforce in there, but also keeping agile and standard across. Now, a person's experience does not depend whom do they connect with. I'm sure you have experienced it. You give a call to a customer support. A lot of times, your experience depends on the person who's doing it. Whereas if you have a standardized experience every time with every person, you'd be able to have your brand recall better. So as a customer success, you're not just looking at your solving of tickets or resolutions, you're looking at upselling, you're looking at brand recall, you're looking at something called CBOC. So there are these tools now, of course. There's NPS, your Net Promoter Score, there is CSAT, CWalk. You need to have all of these skills handy. Like, just like every carpenter would have a screw, a saw, a bolt, you need to have your own toolbox. You need to have a bot in your toolbox. You need to have optimization of processes. For example, if I am a customer and I want to reach to you, it takes me 3 clicks to do that. Your North Star metric becomes you have to make it 2 clicks, right? Look at Apple phone. They did not even want you to put fingerprints anymore. They would just scan your face and they open up. It's not just something cool. It's also removing the number of clicks you had to unlock your phone, right? So all these things, again, that acceleration I was talking about at the start, everything is buying you more time, but at the same time, you need to work that like in skills that also create time for the company and for you. And the cycle goes on. So process, bots, automation, canned response schemes, if you are able to specialize just in content. A lot of times we send this message to a lot of candidates. When you apply at Inc42, you'll get an email that says that, you remember that habit we used to have as kids, go open the fridge, look at the fridge, close it, and then come back. We never actually did something. I mean, we just opened the fridge, looked at it, closed it. Do with your mailbox throughout the recruiting process, the same thing. Today, that thing will help you. All of the time you were opening the fridge was a practice for your email. So a little funny message in there. All it does is it actually resonates the person. And, oh yeah, I got this email. So content specialists are a lot there. In banking itself, you can specialize what sort of clients you would get for banks. You could specialize in getting startup clients. You could specialize in onboarding MSMEs. Or now that there's a digital economy, a lot of people have their businesses on Instagram and online, D2C businesses. So again, it's changing every week, every 2 weeks. You don't have to stop and wait that you would get a job or you would get a skill. We were all already late. So you have to back up and start really fast in all of these areas. And all of this is YouTube, Google, Wikipedia, Reddit. You don't have to pay for it. It's all available. I mean, everything that I've said.
Sure. So Mr. Sharma, it's already 6 p.m., but we have 3 more questions. So is it okay if I take those up?
Please, be happy to.
Thank you. Pankaj has a question that the hiring process across geographies is different. In India, the referral system and personal recommendations have huge conversion rates. So does this process sometimes override merit, and how do I evade discretion with managers?
Well, not just that, there are a lot of biases that we have at the back of your head. So, for example, whenever a person or reporting manager gets a profile, they don't get to see the name or the picture or anything else except for the resume part. Because when you're assessing someone, you're doing it on skills, right? We don't need to know what gender they belong to, what salary brackets they are at. If my current salary, let's say hypothetically, is X amount, and a company has a budget of Y, which is 3 times of X. But the standard goes in that I would go in and I say, yeah, I'm looking for 30% hike, something that we keep hearing. So you would get 1.3X now. Actual budget was 3X. So don't share, like internally, recruiters should not share the salaries, the pictures, the name of any individual for true unbiased opinions. Now, just based on that achievements or the work you've done, which needs to be quantified, a person moves ahead. Coming to a source mix effect. So we call this source mix effectiveness. Which source is likely to get me a conversion at the shortest possible time with the least cost per hire? So that's how I would want to look at it. Referral systems are just that one buyout where I can skip one step. And that's what most companies do. We don't have to do the initial call in understanding if the core requirements of the role are mixing up, because that's the internal trust. If the company culture is as such that when you're referring someone, it is not that the favor. I mean, referrals are never favors. It is the fact that you are putting a stamp of your name over a candidate. So now their achievements are directly associated with yours as well as the reporting managers putting in the reference. So that's first internal culture all companies need to have. That would not cause anything but merit, because I would not want to refer anyone, no matter how dear they are to me, if that takes away my credibility. Credibility is not there, no projects work out for you then. Second of all, if you saw, I mean, I could not zoom it much more than I did because a lot of things I'm not even sure I can show or not. But if you look at that process, the system is as such where each profile, based on your experiences, if there's a different flow. If I am an editor who has 20 years of experience and I get an email that, hey, your profile is shortlisted, how about you do these 3 assignments for me, then 3 interviews for me, then a case study, and then I will hire. You'd be like, "Madam, why would I do that? I mean, 20 years I have proven my work." So each individual gets a customized flow according to them. Same goes for your hiring system as well. Referrals are great and definitely help, but you'd be surprised that even if I take all the referrals, I would still have, or companies would still have more jobs to fill in. So referrals are just like any other source, as LinkedIn, Naukri, or any other that we use. It does not actually superimpose or take over the other sources there are. A person who applies legitimately has equally a good value. Even more, if you have a referral, I can actually negotiate better because there are 2 people I can use favors from. So it's even better to not have a referral in that case.
Thank you. So a little related to that question itself, Kamal asks that what are the ways to apply for management or mid-management jobs? Because generally, if he applies on web portals, he does not get replies.
Because probably, again, I assume assumption here, don't take me off my word there. But if you're sending the same resume everywhere, and it's happening, then it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing again and again. So the output would obviously be the same. You're probably applying for a job that is not relevant to your skill sets. So you probably have to read the JD. A lot of people don't do that. Then you cannot have one resume that goes to every job application. I mean, it's impossible. There are 2,100 applications that I received from when we started this webinar to now. No one's going to go through those 2,100 applications. The system, most of the companies will parse your text. They wouldn't know anything. They would just take up, they would see if there are keywords that I'm looking for a job. So out of those 2,100, there will be 50 profiles that have the maximum keywords that I'm looking for. A lot of people waste their resume space with their pictures, with their घर का address. I'm not going to go to your house and give you a job, of course. I don't need all of details, your blood group or any of that. Use your entire space for keywords. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? You work about the fact of how tech will overtake people. We are human beings. You're smarter than tech. We created that tech. So you just need to manipulate it. Customize your CV. If you're applying for a job that says product marketing manager, your designation should say product marketing manager. You could be doing marketing for a product. So technically it is product marketing manager, right? Your leaving data, your pastors may have a different designation. But if you're able to achieve the JD you're applying for, no one really cares if you've changed your designation or anything for that application point. That's just you being smart, you being SEO driven or SEM driven, because you're manipulating the system. And of course, we would want to hire someone who knows how to manipulate the system. So that's the only reason. Customize each resume to each job you apply for, and promise you'll get a response. Maybe in 50, 70 applications, because that's what it took me when I was applying here as well. So don't be with that, because it is just how the market is. You go with 50, 60 applications, you have a tracker for those applications. A lot of times we just apply everywhere and we don't even know where all we've applied for. So maybe people replied, it went to your spam box, but you had no idea because a few you remembered said maybe no or did not reply. But there are so many you had randomly applied for and they have replied, but you don't have a track of it. So again, break it down, make it systematic, make it smart, track everything that you do.
The last question for the day would be from Simran, who asks that can you please provide your views on the unpublished job market and how can we approach the same, because the one we are discussing currently is the published job roles.
Okay. I'm not sure what it means, like having an unpublished job market. If you're talking about, let's say, the blue collar market, or if we are talking about jobs that are internally created but not posted out there, but they're still within white collar. So for both of them, it is your connections as well. So first of all, let's say for me, if I would want to stay relevant in the market, I would want to build connections. If there are people on this webinar who have a similar idea and they understand the importance of speed of learning and rate of change, and people who understand that we alone cannot do it, probably half of us would have to collaborate with each other to just be relevant for one more week, and then again with new people another week. So that's what takes it for those roles as well. Of course, your references, there are events, there used to be events where you, let's say, like a mixer or a networking event, where people used to build those things. Of course, those are not possible now. But if you look at, there are so many platforms that are hosting certain events. You have proper rooms, you have lunch tables, you have virtual experiences. So you have to be active. But it comes back to, again, first, being fast in your current learning, automating things. That saves you time. When you have time, then you get to do all of these extraordinary or ideal sounding things. Once you do that, maybe you continue with some of them and those will get you results. It's a slow, steady process that needs to be done very fast, like a marathon. So I think there's no other way unless you have enough people who know you and someone or them cares about a job that's not published. If it's in that sense, that person would refer you. And that is why even the recruiters are active on LinkedIn. They put a post and you would see a lot of blue comments down there, people referring each other. So if you go on a website, especially now, because companies don't have budgets, so they cannot buy job posts or premium job posts or job advertisements. But companies still have jobs open with them. They're looking for it, but they can't advertise. All of that is only through network. Because the most best way would be someone putting a post from their own LinkedIn. So that's probably an unpublished job.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much, Shubham, as we're coming to the end of the session, for taking out time for us. And we have gained a lot of perspective and also a lot of motivation, how to better our own profiles and how to utilize the available roles better. So I think we're going into the weekend with a lot of insights and a lot of food for thought as well. So on behalf of all the learners at Emeritus and Eruditus, thank you so much for being with us today. And to all the participants here, a very happy weekend to you and stay safe.
And stay relevant to the talent market.
Definitely.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing, and I hope this could help. You can all connect on LinkedIn. I'm sure initially it would be a bot that replies, but I would come back to it and we would chat if you need any help.
Thank you.